basically shows where tanks won't start. You go to try to make something work, like our ballistic missile system. You punch all the buttons you want, and nothing happens. Now,
yes,
I don't know how they...
Yeah, David Wilcock has actually outlined some of this on his blog that I've read as well. Maybe I'll just, at this point, insert this for you to comment on. I have an article posted by a whistleblower, a former defense contractor named John Kettler. And John Kettler has posted onto his blog the following: ETs, EDs, spooks, Drake and the planet says that you are being protected by extraterrestrial and extra-dimensionals. And I know that's wild for some people who are mainstream and maybe don't delve in this area, but this article from John Kettler is actually very supportive of you, and Kettler is in contact with what we will just call off-planet beings. Would you care to comment on that?
Well, pretty simply this. I have a couple of blog sites that come through on various different news outlets that I listen to, and a couple of those reference galactic councils and people of this nature, beings of light and all this. Basically what I did was somebody had been complaining about chemtrails, and I thought it was time something should be done. So I've mentioned to ET that it might be a good idea, if they want to really be friends and show their good intentions, to maybe start taking care of some of these problems in ways that nobody else can. And what was really funny about that was that the following day I got a report in an email that this guy saw some sort of, a quote, flying device following a chemtrail plane, and it was gobbling up the chemtrail. Well, apparently it got tired of the taste or didn't like the way it smelled or whatever. It fires this little ball of energy at it, at the airplane, and the airplane starts smoking. Well, that's okay, but it's still putting out the chemtrail. So the turkey fires again. The plane can't handle the second burst of energy, whatever it does to it. I don't know if that's electrical or what it might be. I have no idea. But the airplane basically went down. At the point where the airplane went down, this thing went over and at low altitude, hovered for a few minutes, and then disappeared, just as ET craft seems to do. They like to go zit, and they just take off so fast you can't follow them. They disappear. That's and this is a report that could be totally bogus. I don't know. What I'm saying is that it is this sort of thing that encourages me that there may be this ET. Let's call them angels, divine intervention.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Yeah.
So I cannot dispute that it's there, having heard these kind of reports. I mean, you cannot have a whole battalion of tanks that don't start. That doesn't work. It does not happen that way. Those are astronomical odds. So, take it for what it's worth and think about it. I mean, how funny would it be? And I'll give an example. There's an old movie. It's an old sci-fi flick. It's called The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Oh, yeah.
And the only thing he did was turn electricity off for about 10 minutes. So, if those ideas were available back then, I imagine E.T. probably could do that if he really wanted to today. If there is such an E.T., I haven't met one yet, and I'm looking forward to that if they ever decide to land in the yard.
Well, I guess that goes to my next question along this line, and it is quite simply, is disclosure part of this? Are we going to, as a result of what we've initiated, now begin to see visible intervention by off-worlders, angels, spirit beings, whatever you want to call them?
My understanding is that we are supposed to. The intervention will be selective, as I understand it, and will not be extraordinarily highly publicized until after they introduce themselves. Then the remaining of that supposed thing they're supposed to be doing by making us into the same thing they are comes about.
Okay.
Does that cover that?
Yeah, that's very cool. Thank you. A couple of questions that I have that were posted onto my blog. Is it possible that the mass arrest planned by the network have been surveilled by CIA time travel or remote viewing?
I know it has. I've been in touch with a couple of people that initiated those programs, and one of the things, you can look this up on David's website, David Wilcock, Divine Cosmos, is called Operation Looking Glass. This gives you a view, or did at the time that it was active, into the future, so that they knew who would be president, so they knew what to do about it. They knew what was going to happen in the stock market or this or that, and knew what to do about it. So apparently this is real from everything that I can deduce. What you have to remember is this. The first evidences of ETs that we could put our hands on started back in the 30s. A lot of people ain't aware of this. They know about the crash at Roswell in 48, but they don't know about the ones earlier. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to reverse engineer something. Just an average electrician can do these things. They're not as complicated as people would like to think. So what you've got is, think about the extraordinary collection of different types of really far-out technologies, things that we only dream about or put in sci-fi movies, actually being real. Now, I want you to think about, they had a thing called the Lost Ark, and Indiana Jones lost it in a big warehouse full of all kinds of that sort of stuff. Well,
yes.
That should give some people some idea as to what is real. These warehouses are not, that wasn't phony. It wasn't a movie, I mean, but the actual warehouses exist. Now, as far as new governmental, the idea is to be fully transparent in everything that is done. If there's anything that affects the people of the country involved, those people have to okay the idea, whatever it is. Now, that, I think, is a pretty cool idea. This actually gives Joe, whoever, wherever, at whatever level, a say. You actually have a government by and for the people at that point. And transparency, all the secrets, guess what? The laundry's going to get done. So, we're talking about several things. One is that I have heard they're going to have a learning channel, and that learning channel is going to repeat certain things. Okay? There's supposed to be an informative channel that gives overviews of the next section to give an idea so you can prepare your mind. Then they go back to the secondary thing, and you learn about that technology. Now, these are extraordinary technologies. These are things that you saw on Star Trek. People don't understand that has been available for years. So, these are things to bear in mind. Okay.
One last question that I have posted to my blog, asked by a listener. By what authority or right does Drake consider it acceptable for Americans to arrest citizens of other countries in other countries? Are you suggesting this course of action, and do you think that these criminals, quote, will be arrested?
Well, first of all, yes. 99% of the criminals will get popped or arrested or whatever you want to call it. Basically, countries are going to try to clean up their own messes. If we have information that needs to be sent to Interpol so that they can go get somebody in outer Slobovia somewhere, that information will be transmitted to the correct people. The interesting part about this is that it will be affected on a local level primarily. And remember, I stated localization is important. It's very critical because only at certain levels do you find open crooks. The banks openly steal from you legally. Well, having something that's legal does not make it lawful. So all that's due to change. So what you've got bankers specifically, or criminals. Now, you have to understand the difference between what we've got in the way of basic hyperbole, BS, conspiracy theory, propagated by our government, the war on drugs. That is horse hockey. Another one is the War on Terror, another case of horse hockey. The funny fact, and I hope there's a lot of listeners with a little bit of legal expertise. If you can look, you'll find that very shortly after 9/11, suddenly we had this extraordinarily, I guess it weighs several pounds, document called Homeland Security.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's kind of interesting that those thousands of pages, very concisely written, could all of a sudden mysteriously appear. This deals with the people who used a thing called ALEC, and people are going to look that up.
Yes.
And ALEC produced that paperwork before the event ever even happened. I put out on the internet that proof that George Bush knew about it 6 months in advance. There were official communiques from several of these countries that happened to believe that we might not need to have something of that nature happen, that sent official communiques now, okay? And several of these came out. They are posted on some of these 9/11 objectors' websites. You can take a look at them. I mean, when you get one, you don't necessarily, okay, well, where'd you get the info? And they check it out. You get 3 or 4 of them, it's time to pay attention. And I would suggest that Bush knew about it. The reason I say that is because I know who was party to him and the action. So, like I say, there's people that are retired that are going to be arrested for crimes they've committed. A financial crime is one thing, but when you kill 1 million people, that person needs to be executed, in my opinion, slowly, but executed nevertheless. As I understand it, the idea of being nice in terms of executions is going to go by the wayside. These people are not going to be executed nicely. It could be firing squad. It could be a hanging. There's a variety of different ways. Electric chair. These things are going to come back. We might even use the guillotines that they sent over here in the boxcars for us. I don't know yet. That hasn't been stipulated. I know I was an interrogation officer in Vietnam. I can make a hardcore communist agent talk, and I didn't even have to damage the person. So this will give you an idea as to my understanding about psychological operations. I would love to get a hold of some of these people and interrogate them personally. I think it would be enjoyable.
Absolutely. Okay, we talked about the UN. What about NATO? NATO is probably the longest-standing treaty organization that we presently have in place, and from that emanated a lot of the other treaties that have been handed down over the years. It is my understanding that a treaty signed by a sitting U.S. president is a binding document incumbent upon the American people, and that is, in fact, even in the Constitution. What happens to NATO, what happens to the treaties that have been drawn up in alignment with NATO and other organizations related to our military operations overseas?
Okay, basically, in that particular aspect, the president has to be signator to a document sent to each one of the treaty agreements or parties. First of all. Secondly, by executive order, rescind the treaty. And thirdly, break all relations, to include diplomatic if necessary, relations with these countries that would be involved in that specific treaty. Now, this may be done in a formality matter where the ambassadors and people don't go anywhere. They just sit there for a few minutes, and we get a communique. We would like to reestablish relations with your country diplomatically, and you okay that and send it back. Then you have the diplomatic relationship restored without the treaty. That's basically how you rescind the treaty. Okay.
What about the National Security Act of 1947?
Trash.
Okay.
The administration with it, TSA along with it, IRS along with it. a lot of alphabet agencies that are not going to exist anymore.